Kwame sat at a wooden table in Mama Ajoa's small restaurant, the only eating place in their dusty village of Nkwanta, Ghana. The single plate of jollof rice and chicken before him represented 7 days of collecting scrap metal under the scorching sun. 7 days of walking barefoot through the red earth to sell bottles and cans in the nearest town. But just as he lifted his fork, his eyes caught sight of an elderly couple at the next table, their weathered hands clasped together over empty plates, their dignity hanging on silence. What he did next would set in motion a chain of events that would shake his small village and change his life forever. The boy's stomach growled, sharp and unforgiving, but his eyes didn't leave the frail couple across the restaurant. The old man wore a faded Kent cloth draped over his thin shoulders, while the woman beside him adjusted her head wrap with trembling fingers. Their plates were empty, their eyes downcast, their voices reduced to whispers as they discussed how many days it had been since their last proper meal. Kwame looked at his own plate, the aromatic jollof rice steaming in the evening light that filtered through the restaurant's small windows, and then, without a word, he stood and carried it to their table. The old man's lips trembled as he whispered Medas. "Thank you," while the woman's eyes filled with tears that sparkled like precious stones in the lamplight. The boy smiled faintly, but his own hunger gnawed deeper. He didn't ask for anything in return. He just nodded respectfully, touching his heart with his right hand in the traditional gesture, and stepped out into the warm African night where crickets sang their ancient songs. That boy was Kwame Asante, 14 years old, thin for his age, with feet that had grown tough as leather from walking the unpaved roads of rural Ghana. He lived with his grandmother, Nana Akojua, in a small mud brick house with a corrugated iron roof that drummed like ancestral drums when the rains came. Since his parents died in a car accident when he was 8, Nana Akojua had been his world. But she was growing frailer each day, her arthritis making it harder for her to tend their small garden of cassava and plantains. Kwame worked every day after school, collecting anything that could be sold, scrap metal, plastic bottles, anything the city people discarded. He would wake before dawn, help Nana Akojua with her morning prayers and herbal tea, then walk the 3 kilometers to school. After classes, he would spend hours searching for recyclables, his school uniform growing dusty and torn as he climbed through refused sites and construction areas. That jollof rice had been his one reward for the week, the meal he had dreamed about during long, hungry afternoons. But what no one in that restaurant knew was that Kwame carried something much heavier than hunger. His father, Kofi Asante, had been a teacher who walked from village to village, bringing education to children who otherwise would never learn to read. Before he died, he had taught Kwame the old Akan proverb that became the boy's guiding light. Sewor faina wazankafa yenchi. It is not wrong to go back for that which you have forgotten, but it is the giving of yourself that makes you remember who you truly are. As Kwame walked home that night, hunger twisting inside him like a physical pain, he whispered his father's words into the star-filled sky. The baobab trees stood like ancient sentinels along his path, their massive trunks holding stories of generations who had walked this same red earth, who had faced the same choices between keeping and giving. Nana Akojua was waiting for him on their small veranda, her slight frame silhouetted against the kerosene lamp's warm glow. She had prepared a simple meal of boiled yam with palm nut soup. Not much, but shared with love. As they ate in comfortable silence, she noticed the boy's unusual quietness. "Kwame, my grandson," she said softly in Twi, "your spirit seems heavy tonight. What weighs on your heart?" He told her about the elderly couple, about giving away his week's reward. Instead of scolding him, Nana Akojua's face broke into a proud smile. She reached out with her gnarled hands and touched his cheek. "Your father's blood flows strong in you, my child. Tonight, you have made the ancestors proud." The next morning, just as the first golden rays of sun painted the acacia trees, a small convoy of vehicles stirred dust clouds along the village's main road. Such sights were rare in Nkwanta. Usually only the monthly medical outreach or government officials brought cars to their remote corner of Ghana. Kwame was sweeping their small courtyard when he heard his grandmother gasp. Standing at their gate was a tall man in traditional Ghanaian formal wear, a beautifully tailored Kent kaba and slit, accompanied by the elderly couple from the restaurant. Behind them stood several other well-dressed individuals with cameras and notepads. The man stepped forward and greeted them in fluent Twi, showing the proper respect to Nana Akojua before turning to Kwame. "I am Dr. Emmanuel Osei," he said, switching to English. "I am the Minister of Education for this region, and more importantly, I am the son of the couple you helped yesterday evening." Kwame's eyes widened. Dr. Osei continued, "My parents told me about a young man who gave his only meal to strangers without expecting anything in return. In our modern world, such selflessness has become rare. When I learned this young man was doing such things while struggling to fund his own education, I knew I had to meet him." From a leather briefcase, Dr. Osei pulled out documents that would change everything. "Kwame Asani, you have shown the true spirit of Ubuntu, that we are all connected, that your humanity is tied to mine. I want to offer you a full scholarship to the best secondary school in Accra, with boarding and all expenses paid. Beyond that, I'm establishing an education fund for your village, so other children like you can pursue their dreams without choosing between learning and survival." Kwame felt his knees grow weak. Nana Akojua, standing behind him, began to weep tears of joy, her prayers of years finally answered. The boy wanted to speak, but the words caught in his throat like the red dust after a harmattan wind. Dr. Osei placed a gentle hand on Kwame's shoulder. "Son, my parents told me something else. They said you touched your heart before you left, showing that your gift came from your soul, not from expectation of reward. That gesture, which honored our traditions while showing pure compassion, told me everything I needed to know about your character." News of Kwame's act and Dr. Osei's response spread quickly through the region. The Ghana Broadcasting Corporation sent reporters. Social media posts shared his story across West Africa. Neighbors who had known the quiet, hard-working boy since childhood now spoke of him with deep respect. Children at school gathered around him, but Kwame remained humble, often repeating his father's teaching. "True strength comes not from what we keep for ourselves, but from what we share with others." The elderly couple, Opanyan Kwaku and Obaapanian Ama, became like additional grandparents to Kwame. They had been retired teachers themselves, struggling to survive on tiny pensions that barely covered medical expenses. Their son's success as a government minister meant little to them if they couldn't maintain their independence and dignity. Kwame's gift had restored more than their physical hunger. It had reminded them that the world still held kindness. 6 months later, as Kwame prepared to leave for his new school in Accra, the entire village gathered for a farewell ceremony. The chief presented him with a special Kent cloth that told the story of generosity and wisdom. Nana Akojua, now able to afford better medical care thanks to Dr. Osei's additional support for the family, stood proudly beside her grandson. "Remember," she whispered as she adjusted the Kent around his shoulders, "you carry not just your own dreams now, but the hopes of every child in this village who will benefit from what you have started." That evening, as Kwame sat under the ancient baobab tree where he used to do his homework by moonlight, he felt something he had not felt since his parents died. Not hunger, not fear, but an overwhelming sense of purpose. His father's words echoed in his mind, now expanded by his own experience. "Sewa faina wazankafa yenchi." We must never forget where we come from, but we must also remember that our greatest strength lies in lifting others as we climb. The scholarship would take him far from Nkwanta, but Kwame knew he would return. He would return as a teacher like his father, as a leader like Dr. Osei, carrying forward the lesson that hunger passes, but love and the courage to act on that love stays forever. Acts of kindness may go unseen by crowds, but they are never forgotten by the hearts they touch. Kwame's story reminds us that generosity multiplies across generations, often returning in ways we cannot imagine, creating ripples that reach far beyond a single village, a single meal, a single moment of choosing to give rather than keep. In the red soil of Ghana, under the endless African sky, a boy's simple act of sharing had planted seeds of hope that would grow into a forest of opportunity for generations to come.